Hello, welcome to the Evolution of You. My name is Tiffany Malcolm, and I'm going to be taking you through this session. This session is very exciting, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And this is about how you can take your current career in construction and do some continuous learning, some continuous development to help evolve yourself into uh, into finding the right career path that is for you. So, I'm going to be using a lot of examples from my background as I take you through some tools that I've used. So, to start off with, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. So, like I said, my name's Tiffany. I have 12 plus years in the construction industry. I started with Bechtel right out of college after getting my mechanical engineering degree. When I started with Bechtel, I was a cost analyst. I did that for a short amount of time, and then I moved into construction planning and scheduling. I really enjoyed that aspect. I was in that role for about 5 years, moved all around the globe with Bechtel doing that work. I worked in Australia, I worked in Canada, as well as the United States. After about 5 years of being a construction planner, I realized that that wasn't really the path that was going to bring me the most satisfaction out of my career, and it just wasn't really right for me. So, doing some evaluation of what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and also just where was going to be the strongest benefit to my skill set, I moved into field engineering. I was in field engineering for several years in a couple different roles. I was a piping and mechanical field engineer. Then I did some workplace planning work within field engineering, became an area field engineering manager, all in for about 3 years within those various roles. Again, realized that wasn't really the path that was going to get me to where I wanted to go. So, about that time, I realized that I really wanted to be either a construction manager or a project manager. And so, once I had realized that that was where I wanted to go, I moved in a very different direction and became a construction superintendent. I did that for about a year and a half. And then I got a role as a project manager, and that is what I do now. I'm currently a project manager for McCarles, which is a mechanical construction company located in the Pittsburgh area. So if you followed along with that, you can see my career went in several different directions, but it was always moving forward. That was done with some thought and some purpose on my side, as well as finding some right positions at the right time. So, with that, I'm just going to take you through some of the things that I've used throughout my 12 years to identify what was right for me. Um, and hopefully, you can pick up some good information from that as well. So, to start with, some really good advice that I got early on in my career was begin with the end in mind. So, this was related more to construction planning, but I really used it in terms of my career planning. So, when you're looking at the end, it's where do I want to be in 10, 15 years? What is all of these smaller jobs or um, other positions really building and leading me up to? So that's one way to look at it. What I found was very helpful was to not necessarily look at the job titles, but to look at other aspects of the job. So, first off, was what drives me, what motivates me to get out of bed and go to work every morning and to stay motivated throughout the day. So, working in the construction industry, it's typically long hours, early starts, late nights, etc. So I knew that the job that I needed to be in really had to provide me with that passion to get up at 5 a.m. to make a 6 a.m. POD, etc. And so anytime I was in a position that wasn't providing me with that drive and that motivation, I knew it was that wasn't the right path for me and that I needed to look at something different. The next question is, what problems do I like to solve? every job that you have is going to have a set of problems. So what is it that I like to do? What are the things I want to think about day to day? And what are my career options or job options that can allow me to solve those problems? Another really key aspect to think about is, what do I want my day to look like? Do I want to be in meetings all day long? Do I want to be more at a computer? Do I want to be on a job site? So, particularly within construction, I think this is really going to be what drives some of those career choices. So, again, for me personally, I really enjoy being out on a job site. I enjoy working with the people on the job site and being involved with those both day-to-day decisions and the overall all scope. So that what your day looks like is very important to think about what positions you apply for to move your career forward. And then another thing that I really found a good question for me was asking yourself, do I enjoy managing people, or do I enjoy managing processes? So again, particularly in the construction industry, these can take you down various paths on how you want to structure your day and what you want to do. All right, so those are some things to start with. So just a refresher, what drives you, what gets you out of bed, what problems do you like to solve, what do I want my day to look like, and what do I want to manage? Is that people or processes? And this is always an ongoing process. I found that it's best to come back to these questions every so often and reevaluate those. So, in the span of my career, the answers to those questions have changed dramatically from when I first started fresh out of college to where I'm at now. And that's really how my career changed, is I came back to these questions and really put some thought into it. And realized that I wanted to go in a different direction. So, all right. So once we've kind of thought about that and where we want to go, the question is how do I do that? To me, the first step with that is evaluating your strengths. So, again, a few key questions to think about when you're evaluating your strengths. So you should be both evaluating and leveraging your strengths. So first off is the identification. So once you've identified what your strengths are, you really need to leverage those strengths. So the first question you should be asking yourself is, what are some other positions where I can take this strength and use it in a way that maybe would be outside of the box? So for me personally, one of these things was when I switched from being a construction planner to going into field engineering. That knowledge of the way a construction project is planned and scheduled was really an added benefit for me within field engineering, because I could help structure how to plan my day because I had that background. Another key thing to think about is, do I need to improve the strength more, or is this skill set strong enough? So what I mean by that is, if let's say if you have a strength that you're very good at, something to think about is there value in increasing this knowledge or making this even stronger, or is this good enough for where I want to go, or good enough to get me into the next position or place that I want to be? So for me personally, when I was a construction planner, that was something I was very good at. Was my ability to break down a job into individual steps, and how to sequence those and create that construction plan. When I started thinking about where I wanted to go next, I knew that it wasn't going to be in a more senior construction planning position, that it was going to be in a field engineering avenue. So that wasn't a skill that I needed to sharpen more. It got me where I needed, and I could use that skill set in my next position. So it was time to start looking at other things I needed to improve. Another thing to look at is if you have any unique skills or viewpoints. So is there something that you can really strength, a unique skill? Is your strength a different viewpoint or something very unique to your organization? And again, how can you leverage that into your next position? So once you've evaluated your strengths, the next thing that you really want to think about is your gaps. And to me, your gaps is probably almost more important than your strengths. Okay, so your gaps, the first thing I think is very valuable is to think about, is your gap, whatever you determine your gap to be, is that for where I am now or for where I want to be? And this can be a tricky thing to evaluate, because I'm not saying you don't need to continually improve on your weaknesses, but again, is it something that is going to help you in your next step? Especially if you are kind of thinking of pivoting and going in a different direction. So is this something that's really going to add value to where I want to be? So for me personally, an example of this is when I was a field engineer and then became a field engineering manager. As a field engineering manager, I managed a group of field engineers with a big difference in their backgrounds. There was piping, mechanical, structural, and electrical. I didn't have much technical capabilities in the structural or electrical field engineering background. And for a while, I saw that as a gap, as something that I needed to fix. And I had some really good conversations with my manager at the time and realized that in the position that I was in, it was a managing position and dealing more with the people, not necessarily the technical scope. Um, and so I had to trust my people that were working for me with those technical skills, and I had to learn to be a better manager. So again, you could see that as a gap in my resume, but it wasn't necessarily a gap for me continuing on with my career. Another thing to think about is soft skills versus hard skills. Again, thinking about where you want to go, and what you have. Public speaking is always a good example. Is this something that you're very good at that you can leverage going forward, or is it something you need to work on? So again, taking it back to my personal experience, when I first became a superintendent, a large part of my job was speaking to our craft, so our pipe fitters, our electricians, our iron workers. And that was a gap. I didn't have a lot of confidence in my ability to stand in front of a group of construction workers, and have that confidence. So it was something that I really took on to try and improve. Volunteered to speak at safety days, went to a lot of toolbox talks, and volunteered to lead those, to try and build those capabilities, because I knew that was something I was going to have to need to get better at. And then lastly, your technical capabilities, really being honest about what's required for your job and where your gaps are. This is also something you can look at, to something that can make you stand out in your next position. When you're looking around at the position that you want to go to, have you noticed that maybe people aren't quite as strong in a certain thing, whether it's using a CAD modeling program or some other system that your company uses, or maybe it's some new software that's coming out that you think could be really advantageous to your company to use, to go and gain those extra technical capabilities, that it may not even be deemed a gap if you would look at the responsibilities of that position, but it's something that you can increase your skill set and help you move forward. Right. So um, self-evaluation is very important and it's very critical to your success, but that's not the only way to evaluate your skill set. And there's some other important things um, to help evaluate those. So the continuing calibration. So that's really something you shouldn't wait for a performance review to do. This should be something you do on a monthly or even quarterly basis. Again, reviewing those strengths, reviewing those gaps, and thinking about where you're going to go and how you can use that to your advantage. The next big thing is feedback. So some of the best growing that I've done in my career has been through feedback that I've received, both for asking for it and just in conversations with people. So you can get feedback from your peers, from your managers, and from other employees. The best advice I can give with this situation is don't wait for your annual reviews or your official feedback performance review from your company. The best way to gauge really where you need to improve is just conversations with people at your job, after meetings, after something maybe went wrong. Where could you have done better or done improved in that manner. And then the last one metric performance. This could really depend on the company that you work for, but if your company gathers any sort of metrics on your performance or your position, absolutely try and get as much information as you can of that, because that's going to really give you some hard data on where you might have some gaps and some strengths and some gaps that you weren't aware of. All right. And so lastly, what I would like to talk about is how do you take these things? So how do you take finding your passion and what drives you, comparing that to your strengths and your gaps, and putting that together for your roadmap? So the first thing, and this is a big thing, is what gaps do you see in your current organization? So there's a couple of ways to look at this, and use some personal examples here. So, when I made the switch from being a construction planner to being a field engineer, I saw that the project we were on, we really needed a mechanical field engineer. And I knew that I wanted that position. So I went to the field engineering manager and said, "Hey, I see this gap that we have. I believe I'm qualified for this position, and here's why." And we had a long conversation about that. And he agreed. It was a gap that needed to be filled. I was the right person for it. And so that was a really good opportunity, um, you know, position specific, that I was able to fill. Some other things, maybe just how maybe it's not a specific position that should be there that isn't, but maybe in the project that you're working on, you see something always seems to be falling through the cracks. And maybe there's potentially a way to create a position to fill those cracks. The next thing, what changes do you see in your industry or your organization? So this is a big one right now, as the construction industry comes back from being shut down for a long time in most cases due to COVID. I believe we're going to see a huge shift in the use of um, virtual software, a big shift in how we do things remotely, whether it's inspections on a site through video conferencing, the use of a lot of AI and other things like that. So this is something that's going to be really shifting, especially in construction in the next year or two. So looking forward to those changes, seeing how you can maybe increase your technical skills, whether it be in the use of AI or some of these other things that are coming out, and understanding what's coming out, to be able to position yourself for these new positions that I know are going to be coming. And then the next thing to realize is These changes may not always be linear. So again, taking it back to my career, I didn't go, from a cost analyst to a planner to a field engineer and just like stepping up on those ladders. When I took a new position, sometimes I took a bit of a downgrade in my responsibilities just so I could get that experience. Again, talking about my own experience when I went from being a construction planner to being a field engineer, I actually went down in that organization to take that role. But I ended up advancing fairly quickly within the field engineering organization because I did have a lot of experience and some skills that were unique in the new organization that I went to. So keep in mind that as you're recalibrating and finding out what works for you and what works for your future, it's not going to be an A to Z. You're going to have some ups and downs and maybe coming backwards, and that's perfectly fine. You're always going to be building that momentum to where you want to go next. All right, so in summary, the best thing I can say to you is to always keep the end in mind when you're thinking about your career, and how that needs to evolve with your changes, or your with how that wants to evolve with how you see your future changing and how you can use your previous experience and your strengths to move forward into that next position. So created a bit of a roadmap. So listing out what we've talked about here, these are some good tips and tricks to identify where you want to go. What drives you, what wakes you up in the morning, what keeps you waking up at 6 in the morning to be at 7 a.m. PODs. What are the problems you like to solve? What does your day look like? What do you want it to look like? Do you enjoy working with people or processes? What gaps do you see in your organization and in changes in your industry? This is something I like to keep with me and just reevaluate those. And this is also a very good map to play back into your strengths and your weaknesses. So if you can fill in this and then do your personal evaluation against what you see, you can hopefully identify a new position that may be a better fit for you or a new direction that you would like to go into. And so with that, all right, with that, that wraps up the evolution of you. I hope you found this informative and I hope you got some good tips and tricks on how to evolve you and your career into what you want it to be. Thank you.